The anime begins with a famous quote that says, "When a being is treated with care, a spirit will come to inhabit it." Then, on a bright morning, we see people in the street going about their daily lives, and a red light is cast on a garbage box. Then we see in a certain city 2 women wearing white clothes throwing garbage bags in the designated garbage disposal area. After that, we see a torn dog doll and a girl talking to her mother about how her doll is destroyed. Her mother apologizes since they just bought it, and repairing it would make it worse. She suggests they will buy a new one. We see they put it in a garbage bag and threw the bag into the garbage chute, which passes through pipes to garbage trucks. Then we see a woman leaving, and a strange person wearing a mask and disguised looks at her. The garbage trucks start moving, and we see a person in dirty clothes following them. Then we see a person in white clothes, like a security personnel, hearing a whisper inside a room. He approaches the door to see someone searching through the garbage. He is surprised and opens the door forcefully, pointing his weapon at this person. We understand that this area is forbidden except for authorized personnel. We understand from the security man that this person is a thief who steals from the garbage and stores it, threatening the beauty of their city. He sounds the alarm. Other soldiers come, but this thief throws garbage bags in their faces and escapes through the garbage chute. He tries to leave, but the gate closes. Suddenly the soldiers shoot at him, but this thief was very fast and managed to dodge the bullets and escape. The soldiers continued shooting at the thief while he ran, but a bullet hit him during a jump over the wall. Then he hid and finally escaped from the soldiers. We see this thief coming out of a sewer, revealing his face, and we see he is a boy. He says they are a bunch of idiots who threaten no one. We see in his bag the torn dog doll. Then we see that all people in the city wear the same white clothes and listen to someone playing music. Then we see a person writing in a notebook and listening to 2 women talking about a raid on the garbage the previous night. They are surprised by this person who escapes with the garbage. They think he is someone from the tribes. They look at this person whose clothes show he is of lower status than them. The man looks at them and walks away. We understand that those from the tribes are of lower status and cleanliness compared to those living in the city. The 2 women wish that those living in the tribes would stay on their side. Then we see the man leaving through an iron door, and it becomes clear that there is a high wall separating the tribal side from the city side. We see that the tribal side is an old and dirty city. We hear 2 people talking about the thief who was stealing from the city's garbage, wishing he would stop stealing so the soldiers don't come to them. Meanwhile, we see the thief boy surrounded by the stolen items from the city's garbage, and we hear a girl saying to him, "Rodo," asking if he went again to collect garbage. We know her name is Q, and she continues by saying that people in the city are strict about garbage management, and one cannot predict their actions if Rodo is caught. She asks him why he insists on collecting garbage. Rodo explains to her that the rich in the city dispose of usable things without feeling sorry, and stealing also helps him earn money to cover his living expenses. Q asks him if he loves collecting garbage. Rodo explains that it's not like that. Meanwhile, we see 3 people bullying Rodo, saying dirty smell. They notice Q's presence. She asks one of them what his problem is. He tells her that her smell will become foul if she continues standing with Rodo. He points at Rodo, saying he wears this dirty glove all the time, believing that if he touches him, he'll get a skin rash. Another kicks a light bulb in front of Rodo, telling him no one will buy the garbage he fixes. He continues that under these gloves is terrifying. We hear Q say that Rodo is no different from them. One person says going out with him is a bad idea, because he's crazy, son of a killer. Rodo is shocked by his words. The person continues that these neighborhoods were built to imprison criminals, and that we are their sons, as he believes, and they try to maintain cleanliness to improve their image. Here, Rodo's father is accused of destroying all that because of the murder cases he committed. He tells Q that if she goes out with him, people will think she is bad like him. Rodo looks angry. The 3 people get scared. One says, "Look, these are the eyes of a criminal, and he will become like his father, a killer." They leave. Rodo asks Q why he would become like that. Q says this is a terrible thing to say, and he is not like his father. She continues that he is a good person and cannot kill anyone. Rodo looks at her and becomes tense. Suddenly, Q screams happily when she sees the dog doll Rodo has fixed, but Rodo explains to her that this doll is not for sale. Meanwhile, Q's mother calls her, asks what she is doing, and requests her to come home. Q goes with her mother and tells Rodo she will see him again. We hear her mother say she asked her not to meet Rodo again. Rodo looks at them, then we see him walking on the road. He reaches home to see the person from the city standing inside, repeating Rodo's words that the doll is not for sale. Rodo gets angry and says, "Rigetto, you were watching me." Rigetto explains that he must be clear about his feelings, and continues that he wants to talk to Rodo about his raid on the city's garbage. Then we hear Rigetto telling Rodo that their situation is not difficult enough to risk his life, and to let him handle things until Rodo grows up. Rodo looks at him and explains that he is not in danger, because they never found him. Rigetto responds that they actually found him last night, and knows that Rodo and he are not blood related, but they are like family, and Rodo does not act like he owes him. Rodo explains that Rigetto found him as a child and raised him, and he is not indebted to him but treats him with respect. Rigetto looks at him and wishes he would be honest with Q. Rodo becomes tense. a lamp falls on him, and he looks at Rigetto angrily, asking why they are talking about Q. Rigetto notices Roto's wound and asks when he was injured, asks if someone shot at him. Roto gets confused and says no. Rigetto goes to him and wants to see the wound, to change the bandages on his hands, and asks him to take off his glove. We see Roto taking off his glove, and we hear Rigetto telling him he must stop stealing garbage, or he will be seriously injured next time. We see he bandaged his wound. Roto stands and explains that these wounds are not as serious as the wounds his father left him. Looking at his hand full of scars, Rigetto looks at the ground and says that major crimes are punishable by immediate execution, which is falling into the pit, and this has been the city's rule since ancient times. He continues that Roto's father was thrown into this pit, so Roto must take care of himself, even in this dirty world. Roto tells how his hand was black like this, as he remembers, and sometimes he feels great pain through them, remembering people's disgusted looks at his injuries. His soul was drained when he was young. He explains that Rigetto gave him these gloves, which reduced the pain, and he is indebted to Rigetto. Meanwhile, Rigetto holds the dog doll and advises Roto to tell Q his feelings, or someone will take it from him, and to give her the doll tomorrow. Roto becomes confused and angry. We hear them arguing. At this moment, we see the masked person standing outside listening to their argument. The next day, Rigetto advises Roto to smile and pull his face to smile, but Roto says there is no way that works with his face. He looks at the doll, believing Q will be at her home, and walks on the road, notices garbage bags and looks at them, continuing his path. He explains to us that the pit is a huge waste dump. All garbage ends up in the pit, and anyone who commits a crime is thrown into it. We hear voices of people gathered repeating a phrase, "Send the dirt to the pit." We see a person thrown into the pit. Roto explains that his father was thrown into the pit. He wonders, what happens to the people thrown into the pit? Meanwhile, we hear someone say they're sending another person to the hole. Roto responds with, yes, and realizes that the person speaking is Kyo. Roto stutters upon seeing her and hides the doll behind his back. Kyo is happy to see Roto because he doesn't come here often. Roto can't respond. Kyo continues saying it's a bad scene. Roto agrees, saying it's not much different from anywhere in the slums. Kyo says that the slums were built on the edge of the city to instill the idea that anything bad you do will result in you being thrown into the hole, and that anyone who lives here has to see the executions, whether they like it or not. She looks at Roto and hopes she doesn't see him thrown into the hole. She continues, saying she knows there's a lot of garbage that doesn't deserve to be thrown away, and that if Roto puts himself in danger for it and gets caught, his fate will be to be thrown into the hole. Roto says that's what Regto said. Kyo replies, saying it's because he loves him too. Roto is surprised by Kyo's words, and says, he loves me too? Kyo notices, and is embarrassed, saying she didn't mean it like that. Roto looks at her in amazement. He grabs the doll, puts it on his face, and falls to the ground. Kyo looks at the doll and says, oh, is this the doll? Roto interrupts her and says he thought when he saw it that she would like it. He pauses and clarifies that she might not like it because it came from the junkyard. He extends his hand for Kyo to take the doll. Kyo takes the doll from him and is happy. Roto looks on in astonishment. Then we see Roto running and jumping happily in the streets. He says he has to tell Regto what happened. While running, he collides with city police officers and falls to the ground. They look at him and continue on their way. Roto wonders what they're doing here. Roto continues running to Regto. He hesitates before entering the house, but he opens the door and enters. He was hoping to see Regto, but he was shocked when he saw the masked person on the floor in front of him, and Regto had been killed with a sword. Without hesitation, Roto attacks the masked person. Suddenly, we see Roto lying on the ground, injured. He can't get up. We see the masked person pick up a book from the floor and look at Roto as he leaves through the door. At this moment, Roto hears Regto whispering. Roto goes to him and hears Regto say in a low voice, run. Roto asks him why and who did this to him. He reassures him that he will go get help, but Regto shouts at him and tells him to run and to change this dirty world, and Regto dies. At that moment, the police arrive and arrest Roto and accuse him of committing murder. Roto is shocked and says to them, what do you mean? I didn't do anything. The police force him to be silent and say that he was caught red-handed murdering Regto and that he is covered in his blood. Roto explains to them that the real killer escaped. They tell him to be silent, but Roto repeats that the real killer escaped. So one of the policemen hit him. Then we see people gathered in front of the house and we hear someone say, finally, Roto committed the murder. He killed his adoptive father. And we see the dog doll and hear Kyo's voice saying that she can't believe Roto did that. Then we see people gathered at the hole, and we hear the judge say that our beautiful land has been tainted because of your actions, not only stealing garbage, but also committing the dirtiest crime, which is murder. And we see Roto hanging by ropes at the hole, and the person continues, saying, even if the victim is just a dirty member of the tribes, the perpetrator must not remain on the land for a moment. And he announces the death sentence for Roto, and the people shout and repeat, throw the filth into the hole. Here, Roto appears hanging, wondering what's happening and how this could be happening, and we see that he is getting closer to the hole. Roto continues, saying he didn't do anything, and he looks at all the people standing and begs them to listen to him, and among the people, he sees Kyo standing and holding the doll in her hands. At At this moment, Roto shouts at her and says that Regto was killed and that the killer must be found. Kyo whispers and says, "I used to believe in you. You really are the son of a murderer." And she throws the doll on the ground and leaves. At this moment, the people continue to repeat the phrase, "Send the filth to the hole." At this moment, Roto smiles and says, "You are the filth. Piles of filth with no will of your own." And Roto sees that the judge is raising his hand and notices the real masked killer among those standing. Suddenly, Roto is thrown into the hole, and he vows as he falls that he will send them hell. After a while, Roto opens his eyes and we notice that he is lying in the middle of the garbage, and that he is still alive. And he doesn't know where he is or what this place is. And we see that this place is full of garbage and waste. Roto looks on in astonishment and says, "They used to say it was a landfill," and we see a monster appear in front of him. Roto continues, saying that the hole is the end of everything, people and garbage. Roto looks at the monster in fear and says, "It really is hell." We see Roto looking small, holding someone's hand, and they are staring at the foot of someone hanging. Roto explains that things always seem strange because everyone is busy with the criminals and the filth, and no one has ever wondered what happens to them when they are thrown into the pit. People imagine discussing throwing another person into the pit. A girl's voice asks why they commit crimes knowing their fate is to be thrown into the pit. He remembers the judge's hand, and Roto's eyes show anger. We see Roto running quickly from a giant monster that emerged from the garbage. The monster screams, and then we see several other giant monsters appear from the trash. Roto keeps running, but suddenly, one of the giant monsters stands in front of him. He stops, petrified, wondering what these things are. Just piles of garbage. How could they? Before Roto finishes his question, one of the monsters attacks him, trying to devour him, but Roto quickly moves away. He runs, but stumbles and falls, landing on a human skull. He gets angry and wonders how they could throw him into this hell. An earthquake occurs, and suddenly the monsters stop moving. We see Roto on the ground, injured. He feels that the air is terrible in this place. If he keeps breathing it in, his lungs will tear. He tries to get up, thinking he must find somewhere safer. He looks around in astonishment and wonders if there's any safe place in this strange place to begin with. Suddenly, he vomits blood. The three monsters look at him, starting to move toward him. Roto wonders if he will die here. He remembers Rigto at that moment. Seeing him lying in front of him on the ground, blood coming out of him, Roto says no. He looks ahead and grabs a stick from the ground, starting to rise. He declares that something must be done about the people who scorned him and called him a criminal, who sent him into this pit. But first, that murderer who killed Rigto, he vows to find this person. Suddenly, one of the monsters charges at him, and Roto strikes it hard with the stick. He insists that he must live long to take revenge. Then we see a box thrown at a man holding an umbrella. He looks through binoculars and wonders, is this it? Meanwhile, we see Roto struggling with the giant monster and beating it. Roto explains that this place and these monsters reek. He charges at the monster, jumping on it and hitting the creature, but the monster hits him and pushes him away. Roto crashes into a high rock. Another monster appears, knocking the rock down. Roto grabs a traffic sign and throws it at the monster. Suddenly, another monster emerges from under Roto. He jumps, but starts to spit blood and feels exhausted. The monsters approach him. We see a red flash appear on Roto's hand, and he feels a surge of power. The monsters attack him, but Roto hits the monsters, piercing one of them with a piece of metal. He tears it in half. The monster explodes. We see the remains of the monsters behind Roto, who falls to the ground. He says it smells awful, but suddenly, a bigger monster than the others appears behind him and stands on its hind legs. Roto looks at it and starts running. Suddenly, the monster slams the ground hard. An explosion happens around it. The blast sends Roto flying into the air, and he falls down a slope. Roto, now on the ground, is in pain. He opens his eyes and is surprised to see the person holding an umbrella standing in front of him, wearing a mask. Roto wonders who this is. This person picks him up and then kicks him away. Roto feels intense pain, but the man carries him. He puts a mask on Roto's face. Roto feels he can breathe now. Roto asks him if he's a local. What is this place? What are these monsters? The man looks at him and tells him to be quiet, but Roto looks at him and asks what this world is. The man looks at him and tells him to be silent. Roto explains that he just fell into this world. He wants to know what the pit is, this underground place. The man tells him that they are not underground, that they must stay quiet, so he orders Roto to be silent. Roto screams at him to speak clearly, but the man responds angrily, shouting at him, clarifying that this place is not underground, that this garbage was thrown by you, the denizens of the world. He tells Roto to shut up, because they found us because of you. He gestures to the monster behind them. Roto is shocked. The man continues that these are garbage monsters, made from garbage, and they cannot be killed with any ordinary weapons. They are attracted to the sounds people make. The man insists that Roto must be quiet, that he was hiding from the monsters. At that moment, a monster approaches from behind him. The man continues that all this is Roto's fault for not listening. Suddenly, we see fire coming out of the umbrella. It bursts into flames entirely. The umbrella opens, revealing it armed with sharp blades. The man aims it at the monster behind him, and suddenly the umbrella spins and explodes the monster. Roto notices that the monster doesn't regenerate. He wonders what this umbrella is. At that moment, we see the monsters standing side by side, starting to attack. But the man charges at them, and takes them all out with one strike of his umbrella. Roto wonders if this is a technique used here in the pit, or a special technique of this man. We see the man lowering his umbrella to the ground. Meanwhile, Roto explains that if he had this umbrella, he would have taught the rascals a lesson. Suddenly, we see a monster shooting a bubble from its mouth at the man, but the man defends against it with his umbrella, and the bubble bursts, causing an explosion. In the chaos, the man swings his umbrella at the monster's head, blowing it up. Afterward, we see the man stand with his umbrella turning back into a regular umbrella. He looks at Roto, telling him that he is still alive. Roto asks, "Who are you?" The man takes off his mask, revealing himself as Engin, just a simple cleaner. Suddenly, Engin feels like he's choking from the foul air. He quickly puts on a mask. He shouts at Roto, asking why he took off his mask. Why did he let him do that? Roto looks at him in surprise and collapses on the ground. Earlier, we see a young Roto, his clothes dirty. Rigto asks him what happened. Roto replies that they pushed him. Rigto looks and says those troublemakers again. Roto explains that he told them these things are alive, so they mocked him and beat him. Rigto asks if he hit them back. Roto shakes his head. No. Rigto says good job. Roto explains to Rigto that he previously told him that if one treats an object carefully, it will eventually become inhabited by a spirit. Rigto replies that he interpreted it as those things being alive. Roto keeps quiet. Rigto continues, saying that this is just an ancient myth. He takes a towel and dries Roto's head. He continues that he's sure it was just a phrase to encourage a certain mindset, to take care of the things in your life, that he didn't believe in that phrase. He adds that he thinks this towel has a spirit, which is why Roto should take care of it. Roto looks at him and says, and this thing, pointing to everything around them. Rigto laughs and says maybe. Roto also looks at his glove and says this too. Rigto replies that if he takes care of them well, over time, they will be inhabited by a spirit. Roto is astonished. Currently, Roto wakes up and finds himself bound by chains, and we hear Engin's voice saying to him, "You're awake." Roto rebukes him. Engin replies, "Is this how you treat someone who saved your life?" Engin walks and pulls Roto with him. Roto asks him angrily, "Why these chains? And what are you going to do with me?" Engin answers that he fainted and decided to take him with him. Roto replies that he should untie him because he wants to go back up. Engin stops and explains that this is not possible, and that the place up there is called the Ark, and asks him how he thinks he can go up, because the Ark is constantly moving, and there are other factors, and that this is not possible. Engin pulls Roto and continues that he must accept this and remain calm, but Engin stops when he hears Roto say that this is not possible, and that he will return no matter what, and that Engin knows something he doesn't want to tell him, and that he must know how to reach the Ark. He continues that he wants to know this world, about the monsters, and even about the power that Engin possesses, and asks him to tell him everything, because he will use all of that against the bastards up there in the Ark. He remembers the masked killer. Roto continues that he will not be silent until Engin tells him everything. Suddenly, Engin throws his mask away and says that Roto will not stop talking, and that's why he will tell him about this world. We hear Roto's voice telling him to stop, and we see Engin pulling him forcefully as he walks, and suddenly leaves him on the ground. Roto looks around and finds transport trucks next to a gas station, and asks, "What is this place?" Engin tells him, "Enjoy." Roto turns to Engin and asks him to wait, saying that he hasn't answered him about anything. Engin leaves him alone. But suddenly, Roto hears a voice behind him. He turns around and finds that there are masked people looking at him. One of them wonders, "He's a child. What is he doing here?" He assumes that there is someone with him. It's impossible for him to come here alone. He looks at his clothes and is surprised, and says, "Is it possible?" He approaches Roto and asks him, "Are you from the Ark?" Roto looks at him. The man continues, "Where did you come from?" Roto replies that he actually came from the Ark. Suddenly, the people take off their masks and throw them in the air. They surround Roto, asking him eagerly, "Are you really from the Ark?" Because they have never seen one of them alive before. They are amazed. Roto asks them, "Who are you?" One of them is surprised that Roto speaks their language, and they don't believe he is lying. One of them tries to take off his shackles, but Roto moves away from him. They can't believe he survived. Another person explains that they only find their corpses, and asks him why he was tied up like this. The man tries to untie him. Roto sees that they are kinder than Engin, but suddenly, we see that he is tightly bound by his hand inside a cage, and we hear Roto trying to break free, and we understand that they don't want a valuable person from the Ark to escape. One of them explains that the bodies of people from the Ark are expensive. The whole body, of course, but also the eyes, arms, and legs, and that there are those who would pay them even for their clothes. But despite that, they never expected to get one of them alive. Roto looks at them in anger. One of them replies, "Do you want to know why anyone desires the people of the Ark? Because we hate you," he continues. "You dump your garbage here, and it has accumulated until it polluted the air, until it created monsters. And the monsters killed many people's souls here, and people were crushed by the garbage, and lost their homes because of the poisoned soil." He asks him, "What do you expect them to do when they see you? They will torture you, and tear you apart in front of everyone. After we sell you, we will stand and pay to watch them do that." We see them throwing dirty food in front of him and feeding him by force because he is thin and they don't want him to starve to death. The man smiles and says that he bets his taste is sensitive to the dirty food here. He continues that the people of the Ark are arrogant and never touch garbage, and force feeds him. Another man who smiles at the food waste confirms, "Definitely." The man opens Roto's mouth by force and feeds him, but Roto bites the man's fingers hard until he tears the skin from his fingers. The man falls and screams in pain. We see that the bones have appeared from his fingers, and we see Roto chewing on the man's fingers in his mouth. Everyone is astonished when they see Roto leaning his head on the ground and eating the dirty food. We hear Roto say that the food is not garbage, but it is definitely edible. He looks at them as he eats, and they look at him in amazement. Roto explains that everyone he meets talks about the Ark and the Earth, the garbage and the tribes, here above and there below. He gets angry, and we see a red light appear from his hand and cover his body. Roto continues that they should stop classifying people based on their own classification. Suddenly, Roto gets rid of his restraints and jumps in front of them. He says, "Do you think you have the right to treat me as you please? I won't accept this anymore." The red light appears around him. Meanwhile, Engine was watching him with his binoculars from a distance. We hear him smile and say, "Amazing energy." He continues that he discovered that in him from the beginning. At this moment, Roto takes off his glove and remembers Rigto's saying that if you treat something carefully, a soul will inhabit it one day, and that the soul will come to his rescue. We see the energy coming out of his glove. He grabs the chains and the energy shines even more. The people look at him and say that it is impossible for someone from the Ark to possess that power. At this moment, Engine watches and explains that those who can give life to things and extract their power are the givers. At this moment, the man whose hand Roto bit shouts at the rest of the people that this child must pay the price. He gets angry and orders them to kill him. The people attack Roto. Roto raises the chain and throws it at them. One of them says that they must target the chains and continues that the givers are helpless without their objects. A person appears in front of Roto and knocks the chain away. Roto grabs a car wheel and gives it power. Engine is astonished as he watches the event. Roto turns the wheel into a weapon. Engine and the man are astonished that Roto can use more than one object. Roto hits the man in the face and knocks him to the ground. We notice that he knocked all the people to the ground. He approaches the last person whose fingers he bit. This man shouts at him and wishes him dead. Roto extends his hand to hit the person, and at this moment Engine appears from behind him and grabs Roto's hand and asks him to calm down, and Roto calms down indeed. We see things falling around, and a rock falls on the man's head and he faints. Roto looks at him and asks Engine, "Isn't that right?" Engine replies, "Yes." Suddenly the wheel in Roto's hand turns to ashes, and he wonders, "What is this?" Roto explains that he suddenly remembered Rigto's words and bleeds from his nose and looks at his glove. Engine explains that using such power destroys the body, and apologizes that he wanted to make sure that his power was real, and that he will tell him everything he wants to know about this world, and also about his power. But in return, he extends his hand to Roto and asks him to join the cleaners, because they want someone like him. Roto looks at him in amazement and says to him, I'd rather not." The story begins on Earth, where we see someone sitting on a rooftop. His device beeps, and he turns it off, noting that Engine rarely calls him. He wonders what he's up to, and is surprised to learn that Engine has found a natural talent. In another building, in a place that looks like a clinic, Engine tells the person on the phone that he found Ruto by chance in the wasteland. It turns out he has powers, the likes of which Engine has never seen before, and he has recruited him for the cleaners. He adds that he'll introduce them when he's done here. We see a strange-looking doctor treating Ruto. Ruto looks at him in surprise, and tells Engine that he never said he'd be part of Engine's gang. Engine explains that he's not in a position to refuse. Ruto looks angry and insists he has to go back to. The doctor cuts him off, shouting that he's lucky. Ruto is suddenly startled and wonders who this person is. The doctor continues, saying that only fools wander around in the wasteland, and assures him that if he had breathed the air any longer, he'd be dead or kidnapped. He says he'd better thank this man, meaning Engine. Engine agrees with the doctor and tells Ruto to thank him. It turns out the doctor is an old woman. She finishes his treatment and asks him to pay her. Ruto and Engine leave the clinic. Ruto thanks Engine for paying for his treatment and tells him that all he wants is information and that he doesn't have time to join the cleaners. Engine cuts Ruto off, explaining that he thought the kidnapping incident would have shown Ruto how people here on the surface view people from the skyfolk. He says Ruto will be in trouble if they find out he's one of them. Engine continues, saying this isn't the kind of place that gives out information for free, and Rudo should just shut up and follow him. Later, we see Rudo eating in a restaurant with Engine, who remarks that Rudo's appetite is back after he threw up from eating garbage. Rudo looks at the birds, thinking to himself that he thought the pit was just trash, but they have real cities, food, and everything. Engine continues, explaining to Rudo that it's not just trash that accumulates down here on Earth. The same rule applies to feelings, which are called miasma. Sometimes, miasma turns into energy, leading to various results. Among these results is the birth of trash monsters, who attack humans on sight. They are always found in the dumping grounds outside, but sometimes they can get into the cities. At this moment, Rudo asks him why they don't fortify the entire city. Engine replies that it's because of human nature. They can't stay cooped up forever. Engine explains that normal weapons can't kill these monsters. He points to Rudo's glove and explains that his gloves can kill them. Rudo is surprised to hear this. Engine explains that when someone treats an object with care for a long time, miasma inhabits it, and they call these things jinkies. Defeating trash monsters requires the miasma of a jinki. He also explains that only a select few people can draw out the power of a jinki. Rudo asks if he is one of those people. Engine replies yes, and adds that both he and Engine have this ability, and they are known as givers. At this moment, Rudo thinks to himself that Regto was right. Then Engine tells Rudo that the cleaners are a group of trash monster exterminators, and that they need more givers. Rudo understands why Engine wants him to join them, and asks if he joins, can Engine teach him how to get back up? Engine is surprised, and explains that he has no idea how to go back up. Rudo is shocked and tells Engine he acted like he knew how to get back up, but Engine clarifies that he never said anything about going up. Rudo gets worked up, but Engine tells him that their leader might know a way to go up. Rudo demands to speak to their leader. Engine asks Rudo who gave him his gloves. Rudo replies that it was his father, and that the gloves remind him of him. Engine now understands why Rudo keeps the gloves. He explains that when something has value to you, you must take care of it. It's a simple idea, but few people appreciate it. Engine explains that these gloves are good and have a soul, and tells Rudo to take good care of them. Rudo remembers his father and cries. At that moment, Engine gets an alert. He stands up and tells Rudo that's enough information about life on Earth for now, and tells him to wait here. But Rudo interrupts him, apologizes, and tells him he owes him for everything. Engine turns, smiles at him, gives him some money, and advises him not to spend it all in one place. Rudo is surprised and asks Engine if he's sure. Engine replies that he is, and tells him that this money is what he got from selling Rudo's clothes, and he also used it to pay for his treatment and food. So yes, he's sure. Engine leaves. Rudo flies into a rage, yelling at Engine that he's going to punch him, but Engine explains that he can't walk around here in skyfolk clothes anyway, and tells him to wait here. Rudo remains standing there, angry, thinking to himself that he'll leave these idiots as soon as he finds a way to go back up. At that moment, a cat appears, snatches the money pouch, and runs. Rudo chases after it, trying to catch the cat, but it gets away. Rudo finds a stick and picks it up. It turns out this stick belongs to a person standing there. We see the cat stumble as it jumps on a dumpster and falls. Rudo catches up to it and pins it with the stick, trying to take the money pouch back. But suddenly, Rudo hears someone from behind him say that belongs to him and tell him to give it back. Rudo explains that the money is his. The person clarifies that he didn't mean the money, but the stick. Rudo is surprised but tells the person it's a shabby stick. Suddenly, we see the person grab the stick from Rudo and push him away. We see the person holding the stick and sniffing it. Rudo wonders who this person is and notices he's wearing the same emblem as Engine. The person asks him if he thinks he can steal someone's treasure and get away with it without being punished. Rudo is surprised and wonders if this person is one of the cleaners. The person tells him he will receive a great punishment. We see the person raise his stick and point it at Rudo. The person tells him that when you steal someone's treasure, you must be prepared to face the consequences, adding, "You new talent, Rudo." Rudo is surprised and asks if he knows his name, confirming that he's one of the cleaners. The person answers yes, that Engine told him about him. He adds that he's from the Akuta cleaners, his name is Zenka, and Engine put him in charge of Rudo's training. He says he didn't expect to start his training with something as basic as, don't steal from people if you value your life. Rudo tells him he was just using it to get his money back from the cat. Zenka cuts him off, saying he should go to his father and tell him he didn't raise him right. Rudo gets angry, thinking to himself that this bastard doesn't know anything and is insulting Regto. He starts showing signs of rage. He then remembers Regto advising him that if he wants someone to listen to him, he should try to compromise first, adding that he bets Chiwa hates hot-headed guys. Little Rudo is surprised. Regto smiles and continues, telling him he needs to calm down and think about the other person's feelings. We see Rudo calm down, repeating the phrase, the other person's feelings. He was thinking that Zanka felt that his staff had been stolen from him, and that's why he was angry, and if someone took his gloves, he would be angry too. Here Ruto explains to him that he didn't mean to take his staff, and that he didn't know it belonged to him, and apologizes to him. Ruto looks at him, and suddenly Zanka calms down and apologizes back for his anger, because his staff means a lot to him. Ruto is surprised by Zanka's reaction, and thinks that this is the first time in his life he's ended a fight, and that Raguto was right. Zanka tells him that he will now join the cleaners, and extends his hand, and asks that from now on they will work together. Zanka asks him what his vital tools are and what he can do with them. Ruto explains that his vital tools are his gloves, and that he doesn't know what to do with them. Zanka looks at Ruto's gloves and admires them, and Ruto thinks that Zanka seems like a different person than the one he met earlier. Now he's smiling, and remembers Raguto's advice to change his frowning look and try to smile, and understands that smiling makes a big difference. Meanwhile, Zanka tells him that his staff is his vital tool, and everyone makes fun of him for it. Ruto asks himself if he can smile, and motivates himself that he will be able to smile. Here Zanka asks him why he wants to join the cleaners. We see Ruto smiling a silly smile, and telling Zanka that he's helping them just to get what he wants. Zanka looks at him, and suddenly screams in his face and asks what this damn expression is, and suspects he's mocking him. Ruto is startled and asks why he's angry now, and explains that the expression on his face is the best smile he's ever made in his life. Zanka asks in what world this is considered a smile, and Ruto asks himself what he did wrong, and smiles again another silly smile, and Zanka screams at his face a second time and accuses him of being a crazy person, and continues that he forgives him, and tells Ruto that he's mocking him. Here Ruto responds angrily and asks what's wrong with smiling during a normal conversation. Zanka tells him that he thinks he's special because Engine said he's naturally talented, and continues that they risk their lives daily facing garbage monsters and others, and that Ruto just says he's helping them to get what he wants, and if he can't talk seriously about his goal, it must be a trivial one. Here Ruto remembers Raguto being killed by the masked man, and remembers Raguto telling him to change this dirty world. We see Ruto standing in front of Zanka and asking him what he just said, a trivial goal, and continues that he's serious about this, and that he's doing his best, and warns Zanka not to mock him. Here Zanka understands that they didn't get along from the moment they saw each other. Zanka grabs his staff and turns it into a vital tool. At the same moment, Ruto grabs something and turns it into a vital tool. Here Zanka is shocked and understands that Ruto's ability can turn anything into a vital tool just by touching it with his hand. Zanka continues by saying that this explains what Engine said about Ruto being naturally gifted, and if natural talent is all he has, he won't defeat an ordinary person like me. Suddenly we see Zanka's staff falling from the sky in front of Ruto. Ruto is surprised and wonders when the staff went up to the sky. Zanka begins attacking Ruto. Ruto tries to block Zanka's attack. Zanka tells him he needs to be fast. Ruto counterattacks Zanka, but Zanka raises his staff and hits Ruto with it. Ruto falls to the ground. Zanka tells him that his attack was weak, and continues that strength is all Ruto has. But Zanka feels something on his face and touches it with his hand, and is shocked and stunned that Ruto used a plunger in his fight with him. Zanka tries to explain what a plunger is to Ruto. Ruto attacks Zanka, and Zanka avoids all of Ruto's strikes while disgusted. Suddenly Zanka runs away. Here Ruto wonders what scared Zanka so much, and that he doesn't know what this thing in his hand is, but it works well, and runs after Zanka. Zanka runs and tells Ruto to drop this thing from his hand, but Ruto is still running and chasing him. Suddenly Zanka runs and looks behind him to see Ruto jumping and waving the plunger in the air with all the filth from the plunger flying onto Zanka. Suddenly Zanka screams. Then after that we see Engine driving a car in the city, and sees Ruto sitting beside the road. Engine stops next to him and asks Ruto if he and Zanka have become friends, but is surprised that Zanka is lying on the ground shocked. And after that in Engine's car, we hear the sound of his laughter. He couldn't believe what Ruto did to Zanka. Zanka explains that he has never been insulted with filth before. At the same moment, Ruto is shocked that he was fighting all that time with filth. Engine explains that Zanka looks like a spoiled child here on the ground, and that he was insulted by being thrown filth, and laughs again. Zanka asks him to stop laughing. Engine explains here that it may not be their first meeting with respect, but explains to Ruto that Zanka will be his trainer, and that he's their best giver in controlling vital tools, and that he will teach him a lot. Zanka thinks that Engine believes he is good, and is surprised by that. Suddenly Engine asks when Ryo arrived. We see a girl sleeping in the back seat of the car, and Ruto looks at her. The girl, named Ryo, wakes up and says she got curious. She gets close to Ruto and asks, "Are you Ruto?" Ruto answers yes. He wonders if this girl is a cleaner too. We see Ryo grab Ruto's hair and comment on how unique it is. Ruto is surprised that a woman is playing with his hair and wonders if this is what life on the surface is like. At that moment, Engin says they have to get going, and announces that their next stop is the house the cleaners' headquarters. The events begin as we see Engin driving the car towards the house. They pass through a tunnel, and Roto is amazed. They arrive at the house, get out of the car, and Engin welcomes Roto to the cleaners' headquarters. They enter the headquarters, and Ryo greets Roto. Roto is surprised and asks why she's messing with him. At that moment, Engin calls him over and introduces him to their receptionist named Sumeo, who takes a look at anyone who joins them. He explains that Sumeo's ability is, but before Engin can finish, Sumeo quickly swats 2 flies that were buzzing around Roto. Roto and Engin are both impressed. Sumeo tells Roto she's happy to meet him, and adds that Engin talked to her about him, and she wants to see his abilities. Roto is surprised. Engin explains to him that Sumeo's glasses are her vital tool, and that they enhance her kinetic vision, and if she focuses, she can see a person's essence. Roto wonders to himself if she can really do that. We see energy coming from Sumeo's glasses as she looks at Roto, but suddenly, she stops. Engin asks her what's wrong. Sumeo explains that Roto is very athletic and won't need that kind of training, and his relationship with his vital tool is very good, but his use of it is still unstable, and he needs training to be able to use his power at will. Engin asks if that's all, but Sumeo says, not exactly. She tells Roto there's droppings on his neck. Roto gets annoyed. Engin laughs and realizes why the flies wouldn't leave him alone. He tells Roto not to play with droppings again. Roto gets angry and tells him he wasn't playing. Engin thanks Sumeo and adds that he'll take Roto to meet the leader. Engin explains that there are about 100 cleaners, which includes fighters, guards, and supporters, and that their jobs take them to different places, which is why it's hard for everyone to be in one place. He asks Roto if he wants to meet some of them, because there shouldn't be too many of them here today. He opens the door and is surprised to find a large number of them, so he suggests postponing Roto's meeting with them. Engin and Roto stand in front of a door, and Engin tells him that's the leader's room. Roto says he's going to ask how to get to the surface, but Engin interrupts and tells him to wait. He tells him he bets Roto thinks the first thing he'll say to the leader is, how do I get to the surface? And reminds him that information here isn't free. He advises Roto to tell the leader that he'll work here in exchange for their help getting to the surface, and says he only explained Roto's vital tool to him because he had to. He also advises Roto not to ask the leader about his own vital tool, because none of them know what it is, or what its power is. He explains that all the cleaners follow the leader, and that loyalty is earned not just by skill, but by the ability to gain trust. Roto gets ready to meet the leader. He enters the room, but is surprised to find the leader isn't at the desk. Sumeo appears behind them, and tells them the leader is on a mission and won't be back now. Roto is annoyed, and Engin apologizes to Roto for the leader's absence. Roto angrily replies that he knows that, so what now? Engin asks Sumeo if the leader has any estimated time to return, and then asks Roto if he thought the leader would be more punctual. He explains that the wait could be long. Ryo appears and suggests Roto watch her work. She adds that Roto can't officially join the cleaners until the leader returns, and asks what he thinks about accompanying her as a trainee. She gets closer and tells him she wants to know more about him, and asks if he agrees. Roto is surprised. Then we see Sumeo explaining a client's request to everyone. She says there's a city near the contaminated area that reported small trash monsters approaching their barrier, and they want a cleaning as a precaution. Roto doesn't understand what the contaminated city means. Sumeo looks at Engin and asks if he hasn't told Roto yet. Engin says he called it the dumping area to make things easier for him. Sumeo looks at him with annoyance, then looks at Roto and tells him she'll explain what Engin failed to tell him. She explains that the Earth is divided into safe zones, which support human life, and contaminated zones filled with trash, where trash monsters live. She adds that the place where Roto arrived is an extremely dangerous contaminated area. She explains there are 6 confirmed wild areas so far, and most people die almost immediately when they enter, and they're full of trash monsters, and the donors have a hard time dealing with them. She says Engin finding Roto was a miracle. She asks Engin what he was even doing out there in the wild land. He tells her he was out there to stretch his legs. Sumeo looks at him in amazement. She tells him to wear a gas mask in the contaminated zones, and explains to Roto that inhaling anything toxic will make him seriously ill. She adds that anyone without a gas mask in the wild land will die within 15 minutes. Outside, everyone stands together, and Ryo stands next to Roto, telling him this mission should be easy and wants Roto to watch her closely. Roto thinks to himself that this really is a massive heap of trash, and wonders how many minutes he spent breathing the toxic air. He thinks about how when he was up in the Ark, he always thought the pit was just a big pile of trash, but he never imagined people lived down below, and that the people above don't know that, but he wonders if maybe they do know, and send people and trash here anyway. But he explains that when he looks at the polluted area, it seems to him like a real treasure, and he wants to take everything and fix it. Ryo asks who these people are. Ryo answers him that they are also a group of cleaners called supporters, but they don't have powers, but they are part of the team and help them in their work. One of them extends his hand to Rudo and tells him he's happy to meet him. Rudo extends his hand to shake it, but suddenly the man squeezes Rudo's hand hard and makes him fall to the ground. Ryo laughs and tells him that this man is amazing because his grip strength is legendary, and he can break the outer shell of a garbage garbage monster with his hand. Ruto sees that he's not sure if he can keep up with this energy, but he must watch and learn even if the mission is easy. At this moment, a girl from the supporters tells Ryo that a garbage monster has been spotted. Ruto is surprised by their large number and tells Ryo that she didn't say they would fight a herd of monsters and that she said it was an easy mission. But Ryo assures him that there's no problem and that this type of monster is slow and not strong. We see the monsters approaching and trying to break through the barrier. Ryo explains to Ruto that these monsters can't even scratch the barrier and asks him to watch and learn. Ruto sees that these monsters are indeed much weaker than the one he encountered the first time, but they look a lot like animals. But suddenly, larger and more massive monsters appear in large numbers, approaching the barrier. Ruto shouts that these monsters look stronger, but Ryo tells him to calm down and that it's not a problem. But Ruto shouts again and asks her to call for reinforcements. Ryo asks him to calm down and says that these monsters are indeed bigger and stronger than the previous ones, but they're a good example for training a beginner like him. Ryo thinks the herd won't increase in number more than that, and the sooner they eliminate it, the sooner they'll return home, and they'll have a welcome party for Ruto. Ryo asks him what his favorite food is, but Ruto explains to her that he's still not an official member of the cleaners team, and asks Ryo why she's so calm. Isn't she risking her life? Ryo answers him that if he wants to become a member of the cleaners and survive on Earth, it's important to stay calm. Ruto remembers here that Engine was also calm while fighting monsters before, and asks himself if calmness is what he really lacks, and explains that he needs to calm down. Meanwhile, the barrier is destroyed, and a giant garbage monster appears in front of them. Ruto is surprised by the monster's appearance, and the mask falls from his face. He tells himself to calm down and not worry. He looks at Ryo and asks her, "Isn't that right?" But we see Ryo disturbed by the monster, and tells Ruto that this is not good for beginner training at all, and Ruto is surprised. But Ryo continues that seeing such a monster increases her enthusiasm, and Ruto is still telling himself to calm down. We see Ruto watching Ryo take out her vital tool, which is scissors. Ryo explains that before cleaning the big monster, she needs to do some light cleaning first. The scissors turn into giant scissors, and Ryo attacks the small monsters, and destroys most of them with one strike. Ruto is amazed by her. Ruto wonders what Ryo just did. A man from the supporters tells him that the scissors are Ryo's vital tool called the Ripper, and adds that most people use scissors with their hands, but Ryo uses them with her foot. We see Ryo attacking the monsters and getting rid of them. Ruto understands that each cleaner uses their tools in their own way. At this moment, the man advises him that he must be careful and defend himself. We see a monster behind Ruto running toward him. Ruto quickly turns to it, and suddenly the man intervenes and hits the monster with his hand, knocks it down and grabs it and throws it away toward Ryo and calls to her. Ryo looks at the monster and attacks it with the scissors and cuts it in half. Ryo asks them to send her more. Ruto sees this and is amazed. Indeed, the supporters hit the monsters with their hands and throw them toward Ryo, who attacks them with her scissors. It becomes clear to Ruto that the supporters don't have the power to eliminate the monsters, but they disable the monsters and leave the giver to deliver a knockout blow to them, and that's how the cleaners fight. He remembers his words when he said he's only helping to get what he wants. We see Ryo sitting on her scissors and explaining that all the monsters have been eliminated except, and the big monster appears behind her. It becomes clear to the supporters that Ryo is fighting the giant monster. They explain that they will dismantle the small monsters and keep them out of the fight, and they go. But one of them trips over a monster and falls to the ground, and it becomes clear that monster is alive and rises to attack this person, and another person asks him to escape. And when the monster attacks this person, Ruto suddenly appears and prevents the monster from reaching the person with a stick in his hand. He explains that if he wants information, he must join the cleaners, and that he won't be a burden on others. Ruto transforms the stick in his hand into a vital tool. Ruto is surprised by his strength and how he managed to transform the stick into this form. The monster tries to approach Ruto, but suddenly Ryo appears and explodes the monster, and tells him that he rushes to help another person and this is instinctive for him, and thanks him. The other person from the supporters comes and apologizes that they neglected their defense, and thanks Ryo and Ruto, and asks Ryo if she got rid of the huge monster. Ryo explains to him that she cut it in half, but that didn't work, and that she cut it several times and it didn't work. We see the monster standing behind her. The person understands that this is a monster that isn't affected by vital tools. Ryo sees that this is strange, and explains that the weakness of a garbage monster is usually as in a living being. She intends to cut it into pieces again to make it unable to move. The man tells her that he will record this monster in the registry as it's a new type of monster and they will report it, and will warn neighboring cities. Ruto stands here and doesn't know what he should do. Ryo attacks the monster here, and attacks it with her scissors, and cuts parts of its head, and suddenly sees that there's something shining in its head, and suddenly the monster starts hitting the ground. We see Ryo insert her scissors into the shiny thing in the the monster's head. The monster goes crazy and hits the ground several times, and the things in its head hit the ground and head toward the supporters. The two supporters are surprised. One of them explains that the monster will hit them. Those things from the monster's head approach them and hit the ground in front of Ruto and throw him away. It goes through Ruto's mind at this moment that he promised Rigto that he would teach the killer a lesson, and also the villains who live in the arc, but they can't use his power, and he continues to be a burden on others. He wonders what he's doing here. Ruto falls, but at this moment one of the supporters catches up with him and saves him from falling. We see him carrying him and running to help him and asks him why he froze in place and didn't move. Ruto sees Ryo destroying the monster. The monster screams, and Ryo explains that as long as the monster screams, it means she found its weak point, and she hits the monster with her scissors at the monster's weak point. Finally, Ryo is able to destroy this monster. The supporter and Ruto run to her, and the supporter asks Ryo how she defeated that monster. Ryo tells him that she defeated it when she hit this thing, and explains that this thing is definitely its power source. The supporter looks at this thing, and is surprised because it's not a power source, but it was a vital tool, and wonders what that means. What does it mean for a vital tool to exist inside a monster, in another place? The man whom Ruto hit when he was taking Ruto prisoner wakes up. The man remembers that the last thing he remembers is that the boy from the arc beat him badly. He gets up and sees that there's a strange person sitting in front of him, so he asks him, "Who are you?" This strange person asks him, "Where is this boy who's from the arc?"